Hello everybody, my name is Mélissa Greene. I work at the Institut Quantique de l'Université de Sherbrooke in Quebec, Canada. I'm the manager of the scientific outreach program here at the Institut Quantique, and my job is to create different projects for people to learn about quantum. So I work with teenagers in high schools and college and with the general public. And one of my jobs was in the last year was to develop an escape game about quantum sciences for teenagers. I had the chance before to work in different nonprofit organizations and with museum, and I came across one day this super fun company that were making games inspired by escape games that you could bring with you in your car or in a park and do not really in a room. So when I had this project to develop this quantum science escape game, I said, oh, that could be a really fun way to bring that type of game into a classrooms of teenagers in high school. So this presentation today is how we worked with Freemick Aventure to develop this game. The game is called in French Avantage quantique, which you could translate into quantum advantage, which is a real concept in quantum physics. But also, if you know a little bit about quantum in our game, it gives you kind of like an advantage to advance in the game. So I'll let Fabrice present himself and Freemick Aventure, and then we will have little segments like this to explain to you our process of developing this super fun game.
Hi, my name is Fabrice, and I'm the co-founder of Freemick Aventure. Our company is present in France and in Quebec, and for the past 8 years or so, we've been creating custom-made playful experiences for different types of organizations, from museums to natural parks. The goal of those experiences really is for the players to discover and learn about the place they are visiting in a playful way. We put a lot of emphasis on how we integrate contents into the game we make. We strive to communicate those contents to the players organically through the game, be it through the scenario, through the puzzles, or through the physical elements players are going to manipulate. When Mélissa and her team reach out to us with their vision and their goals, we discussed the possibility of creating some kind of escape room type game that would be fully mobile and that they could bring directly to schools. So the first thing was to identify that format of activity that would fit with their goals and with their constraints. With that idea of some kind of mobile escape room type game in mind, they could move on to their next step, and I'll let Mélissa talk to you about that.
So one thing that was super important for the Institut Quantique was to make sure the science in that game was of really high level, and what we would explain was as close to science as possible. So we formed the scientific committee to validate this, but also to choose the subject that would be included in that game. So we did a couple of meetings of brainstorms and different activities in different on different weeks. They had little homeworks that they had to do to choose to make a really big bundle of subjects, and then to choose what would be in that game to make sure the links between those topics were okay. There was not too much repetitions, and it was reaching the goal of making people being interested in quantum sciences and in the basics of it. Also, like I mentioned before, the people here at the Institut Quantique were talking about doing an escape game for a really long time. So we wanted to make sure the game we were creating now was meeting the expectation of the community. So we wanted to know what kind of story they wanted to hear about, what topics they wanted to talk about. Was the game aimed more towards science or technologies, or the interpretation of quantum sciences? what do they want, what the community wanted to see in that game. So the committee was really formed to answer all of these questions, and they also mentioned things that they didn't want to see in the game. So when we would meet the company that would create the game, we had somewhat of an idea of what the game could look like at the end, or at least what we wanted to include in that game.
Then we had a follow-up meeting with Mélissa and her teams where we tried to discuss about the game in a very concrete way, taking into account their constraints and the resources available. So the game was to be offered to a full class of students at the same time, so they would be put into small teams playing several iterations of the same game. Then we talked about things like how much stock would the facilitator be able to transport and to install and things like that. At that point, we wanted to draw the picture of what it was going to be from the moment the game would leave the Quantum Institute to the moment when the game would be installed in a classroom and ready to play. Then how is it going to be reset? Because it's not all to make a good game, it actually has to be rather easy to operate. So we wanted to make life easy for them to actually operate the game. So once those technical details were ironed out, we really dived into the heart of the project, which was the content and the puzzles. We introduced our goal for the next phase, which was to connect some kind of triangle between the quantum science concepts they wanted to integrate in the game, the physical elements players would manipulate, and the puzzles themselves. With that in mind, we let Mélissa and her team work a little bit on their side, and she's gonna talk to you about that phase.
So at first we had a lot of ideas of subjects and topics and concepts of physics we wanted to include in the game. So we really worked with the scientific committee of this game to really pick and choose what concepts we wanted to bring in the game, what could be the basics of it, what would be too complicated, what we didn't want to see in that game, and what could be the concept that would create a logic link in our game. So to make people really understand the basics of quantum physics. So we did a lot of different meetings, and one other things that was really important, since people here at the Institut Quantique really thought and sleep on the idea of having an escape game, they really wanted to contribute to the scenario of it, and they really had ideas, and they really also had ideas of what they didn't want to see in that game. For example, we didn't want the story to be around a crazy scientist, but we wanted to include the Schrodinger's cat, which is a really classic thought experiment in quantum physics. So we really did brainstorms about the subjects and the topics and the scenario.
So with that brainstorming in mind, we soon landed on a scenario that everyone was comfortable with. The big thing for us was that we didn't want for the stakes of the story to be too high. It's no easy task to really immerse students in a story when they are in their normal environment. They are in their classroom with their science teacher, and we don't have foam walls or an amazing sets like we get to meet in so many great escape rooms. So we decided the students should be themselves. They shouldn't play a role, they shouldn't be a scientist or whatever. So the setup of the story is that they are actually in their science class. There's actually an activity like an introduction to quantum science that is scheduled at this time. Students don't even have to know that it's an escape room. And Mélissa arrives, or one of her colleagues, to facilitate the activity. But on top of the usual items needed for this activity, there are bags on the tables with multiple pockets locked by padlocks. Mélissa explained to the classroom that her boss, Héloïse Fermion, was supposed to go on vacation that day with a lovely cat, Schrodi. that everyone at the Quantum Institute loves. Right before Mélissa would come to the school, she received a call from the airport saying that the boss, who was supposed to take a flight that day, was nowhere to be found, but they needed someone to come and pick up their luggage, and one big pet transport cage locked by padlocks. So now she's not sure why everything is locked. There also seems to be some kind of puzzle trail added to the introduction activity, to the quantum science activity. And she's kind of worried that maybe Eloise tried to make the Schrodinger's cat experience with her own cat in the cage. So she didn't think twice, she was en route anyway, so she went to the school and she's now asking for the students' help to try and navigate this puzzle trail, hoping that they are going to be able to open the cage rather soon. Like she's worried about Schrodi. So that's the scenario of the game. At that point in the development, Mélissa and her team, they invited us to the Quantum Institute to show us a lot of demos that they use in their activities. Physical manifestations of quantum science concepts, from polarizers to calcite crystals, to diffraction patterns and many other things. So it was quite an afternoon. Now, the goal after that was to narrow it down to 5 or 6 concepts that we would make puzzles around. And we quickly came to a definitive list of concepts. Mélissa wrote us some great explanation text, and we had a few follow-up meetings to try and properly understand them. At this point, we came to the realization that it was a concept that wasn't really easy to, I would say, access, at least for us, and we felt like it would probably be the same for the students. So we started making puzzles, prototypes, with the idea that we would need to really segment those concepts to present them. We will need to really go step by step into those concepts through the puzzles. And we wanted to present those first prototypes to Mélissa and her team, and that presentation was met with a lot of confusion. It was a bit of an awkward meeting, and I'll let Mélissa talk to you about that.
So as Fabrice explained, we arrived at a crossroad at one point in our project. We had people thinking the game wasn't scientific enough, and I had to remind them that the goal of this project was really to get people interested in science. In outreach activity, scientific outreach activities, our goal is to create sparkles of interest and not teach or not make the people we're talking about become physicists for us, because we talk about physics and quantum sciences. So really my goal was to remind them that the game, once the people that are playing are having a positive contact with our concepts and our theory, our goal is achieved. So I had to remind them of that, and to keep the activities, the little enigmas, as close to science as possible, but also really simple, because we wanted to keep the interest and just introduce the subject without teaching it. There's no exams at the end of it. So that was kind of a thing we had to do pretty much at the beginning of the development of the activity, but still it was really a turning point for us in the conception of it.
So that kind of recalibrated the goal of the project and of the puzzles themselves. Then it was much more of a normal or usual process of making a prototype for the game. We kept meeting with Mélissa regularly to make sure that we didn't make any major mistakes on the science part, and that the game was taking form still aligned with the general goal of the project. We also wanted to make sure that the final puzzle acted as some kind of wrap-up of the different concepts we introduced through the other puzzles. So in order to solve a part of that final puzzle, players have to have acquired at least some notion about the different concepts. And if they didn't at this point, they need to go back and dig a little bit more in the content itself. So after a few months of development, we had a prototype. We were ready to play test. So we first play tested with members of the scientific committee. We then obviously made some adjustments based on the feedback, and we were ready to play test with like different group of students, and all that led us to the delivery of the game. And Mélissa is gonna talk to you about what happens with the game now.
Well, it's a really fun activity to bring into classrooms. As of May 2025, we've been doing this activity since January. So we visited almost 20 classes, and then we had almost 500 people that played the game. Most of them are kids in high schools, which was our main goal at the beginning. But the game is having a lot of popularity, and different groups in the university of different groups of employees want to play as a team building activity. So it's really, really fun to see this project have that kind of impact, because the people are super excited about the escape game, and they kind of forget it's about quantum sciences. So they're not afraid of playing a game about quantum sciences because it's an escape game. I also have like pictures that you can see here of our of the first group of students that try the prototype, and one picture, I hope it works, of my colleagues playing the game a couple weeks ago. So it was fun, and some of them are like really physicists, and they thought the little games and the enigmas were really well explained and used to explain the physics behind it. So it was really fun to see that, and the kids, the feedback from the teachers and the kids are super positive. So it's really fun. It was also a great occasion for us to collaborate with different technical teams here at the Institut Quantique. So we did one collab with our more mechanic workshop that we have here. So they build this game that we have, which is one of the enigmas about algorithm. So the concepts of it, it's a little bit like Wordle or Mastermind, but they have to slide the little doors and find a combination for a lock they have to open with the numbers that are on this black box. The other things also we had, like maybe Fabrice talked about it, it was to have a story for why I'm here, why am I in their school. So we had this little booklet into the game that I was supposed to bring at the beginning, but they're all written in red and noted from our director that is missing. So this is one example of the booklet that we have in the game. So one thing that we have to deal with now is the popularity of the game, which is a really great problem. People want to buy it. People want to borrow the game. They want to copy it. Like I said, it's not the way we thought about it. We thought about this game as an activity with a student or myself that is explaining things and giving hints and things like that. So now we're thinking, because we have those kinds of questions, we're thinking about how could we make it a game that could be downloaded or played without someone like giving the activity. So it's maybe the next step that we will do with that kind of really fun actually activity. So I'm sorry I can't be there for answering your questions, but I know Fabrice will be there, and I want to thank you all for being here, for listening to our story for this project, which is a great collaboration. I want to thank Fabrice and Freemick Aventure, also the government of Quebec that made this project possible by giving us money to make it, and all of my colleagues here at the Institut Quantique that worked on us for this game. If you have any questions, Fabrice will answer them, but you can also write to us. We'll be happy to answer all of your questions. So have a great day.